Hello. So really quick, I'm actually going to talk about, do a quick reality check for how to tell if a fight is choreographed or not. These are just some small things you can look at, especially if you have training. Even if you don't have training, you can look at these things to see if a fight it has people really going at it, or if it's something that they've practiced. This applies to actually doing forms or doing demos and things like that as well, even for movies and films. And you can tell whether they've practiced it in a choreographed form or if it's actually a fight and they're using real techniques and using techniques and stuff that you can see. The first one is actually response timing. Whenever if somebody makes an action, there always has to be a moment where the person has to recognize the said action. And once that action is recognized, they can now choose to respond to it. Yeah, some people just react. Something's happening, they react, especially in swordsmanship and martial arts, they just react automatically. But if you take the time to respond to it, then they can do more skillful reactions. And people actually train their reactions to be how they want to respond. It's part of the reason they do drills and stuff as well. But there's always a moment where the timing of something action has to be initiated before a counteraction is initiated. And if those actions are mismatched while watching a fight going on, then that's a hint to whether people are practicing or they're doing a form and that it's choreographed. The second thing is actually safety relevance. So whenever an actual fight is going on, or there's some display of skillful moves or skillful tactics against another person, there's always an area of safety that they have to be concerned about. As you've probably seen in more sports and more, as you start taking away the safety gear, the padded weapons or the armor and stuff, people's motions get a lot more narrower. They become a little more cautious in how they move. But when you practice and have the skill of dealing with it, people flow right into the battle. And when they flow right into it, there's still some area of gauging their safety as they're doing stuff, as they're doing techniques, as they're actually countering, moving, binding, weaving, whatever they're doing. And especially with sword fighting. And on top of that, because of the relationship between the said participants, whether they're practicing, whether they're choreographing, or working with each other for years, there's a level of trust or a level of expectancy against somebody else that isn't there in a real fight. And that expectancy is that they're going to pull their attack, or that they're going to have control as well. So in an actual engagement, that's not there at all. It's all on the person who is actually doing any motion to keep their own safety relevant to themselves. The next thing is actually pulled attacks. Whenever an attack starts or an attack ends, the result of it should not be mismatched in timing. So a pulled attack might be a straight up attack that gets pulled back, or the power may be pulled back. It could be any aspect, the speed, the power, the placement, the timing, all of those things. It could be any one of those things that's pulled back. And a way to tell is if you see an action starting and you see another part of it that doesn't really match up in timing or speed, or you see it doesn't match up in distance or something, chances are the attack was pulled. So when you're trying to keep your partner safe, whether it's in film, movie, or you're looking at doing a demonstration, or you're training with your partner, and you do an attack that may catch up to them faster than they expect or something, people pull it. It's pulled a little bit. Now, when you're really trying to strike them down, there is no pulling. If an attack initiates, and the attack starts off and initiated, and there's nothing that's draining where it can be, where it's placed, the timing of it, then chances are that attack was meant to hit its target. It wasn't meant to be blocked. It wasn't meant to go past the person. It's aiming exactly where it's supposed to be. It was meant to strike down somebody. So when you see that, whether it's blocked or not, it needs to be done correctly to tell whether it was an actual real attack. So looking at whether an attack is pulled is a way of telling whether people are choreographed or not. And so the last thing that I like to look at to tell whether things are choreographed or not is actually what I call open tells. In martial arts, you train to take control of your reactions, turn them into skillful responses. And whenever you have a moment where you're doing an attack and trying to make your stuff efficient as possible to actually strike in and hit its target. So an open tell is pretty much maybe an exaggeration of any aspect of your technique or your motion that allows somebody else to maybe recognize it, to see it, to respond to it. So an open tell might be as simple as, you know, the clenching of the fist before you're getting ready to strike versus clenching it as you strike, you know, things like that. So it's a small, subtle way of demonstrating to whoever you're fighting with or practically partnered with that I'm doing this attack now. And so if you see open tells, then chances are these people work together, they're choreographing or they're practicing a form. But when people are really trying to knock somebody out or cut somebody down, there are no open tells. It is that people are trying to hide their tells as much as possible. And so you train to the point where your tells are almost unrecognizable. And that's the idea behind it. So the deception involved in swordsmanship and martial arts, you're trying to take somebody out. You don't want them to see your tells. So with that, those are just 4 things that I like to look at to tell whether somebody's actually choreographing a fight or whether they're really using skillful techniques and they're just good enough to handle each other's moves and counters and stuff. All right? So with that, thank you, and see y'all again.